Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by Onyx Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is Onyx Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, Onyx Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust Onyx Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about Onyx, go to onyxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle this coming year, look no further than a Kelbley's rifle. I've been rocking their Coda rifle for the last couple seasons, and I've had great success with it. It's an amazing shooter, and every time I put one of their rifles in somebody's hands, they're like, oh, I got to get one of these. Kelbley's holds over 92 world and national records that are either broken or set on one of their actions or rifles. So they really set a higher level of accuracy. If you want to know more about Kelbley's rifles, go to kelbley.com. That's KELBLY.com. Tell them Johnny Mack sent you with Soul Seekers, and go enjoy shooting that much more in this coming hunting season. Be blessed, everybody. Go check out Kelbley Rifles. All right, guys, it's Johnny Mack here with Soul Seekers Podcast. I just want to tell you, thank you so much for being a part of everything that we do here. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for going and checking out the show. And those of you who did not know, the show is up for a 2024 Carbon Award. We got nominated for Best Bird Episode, and we need your support. If you feel like it's warranted, obviously, I want to make sure that we earn it. But those of you who listen to the podcast, I'd love for you to go to carbontv.com. If you haven't checked out our episode, Duck Hunting the PNW, go check it out. But if not, also you can go to carbontv.com, click on Carbon Awards, and it's Best Bird Episode. Vote for Soul Seekers. You can vote once a day from now all the way through midnight on the 24th. And then hopefully we come out victorious. But if not, it's still an honor being nominated, and it's so much fun bringing you guys content each and every week. If you guys have recommendations for guests or different content you want to hear, shoot me a message. Go to soulseekersnation.com, click on the Contact Us page, or shoot me an email, or connect with me on social media. I want to be able to deliver content that you guys are interested in. If you want to go more spiritual, soulful, hunting, collaboration, all that, self-improvement, Second Amendment, I want to deliver that content for you. Anyways, guys, enjoy the episode. We'll talk soon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by a phenomenal human being who is a humble heart, somebody who gives and never asks for anything in return. He is the founder of the American Bear Foundation, and he likes to call himself the Chief Volunteer Officer, the CVO, because he started the American Bear Foundation, originally called the Western Bear Foundation, and it has never been something that he wanted to make money off of. If you know anything about me and my past, you know bears are near and dear to my heart. They are the number one animal that I feel like I have to hunt every year, and if I ever miss an opportunity, then I feel like a piece of my soul is missing as well. So without further ado, we got Joe Kondelis of the American Bear Foundation. We're going to talk all about what it was like to start up a foundation, a critter club here in America, breaking up into chapters, what's going on in the bear woods, and politics, conservation, and a whole lot more. So without further ado, Joe, my brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for such a great introduction. I'm humbled.
Yeah, I'm humbled to be in community with you.
Oh man.
You and I have spent a lot of time on the phone, but it's been maybe a year and a half since we actually Chatted maybe
Has to be that long,
two.
maybe two even, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Since you lived in Washington.
yeah, dude, I've been in Texas for 2 years now. So it's
Yeah.
been
So
a
it's been 2 years. Yeah.
man, that's so wild. That
I'm actually honored because like you've gotten so dang big and blown up. You're on TV and stuff now. And like geez, just a little guy from Wyoming here.
oh my gosh, get out of town. Well, hey, just real quick, a plug for all the listeners. Go vote for the Carvin TV Awards. Soul Seekers, a TV show, is up for Best Bird Episode. And if you want to see the mission of mentorship is conservation in living proof, go watch that episode. We take out two brand new hunters and put them to the test. So, but thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'm humbled. It's so inspiring to be able to be in community with somebody who, rubber meets the road. They put their mouth where their money is, where their pocketbook is, where their physical skills are. And you are a living testimony to what I consider the American dream. You think of something, you envision it, and then you build it and you make it grow. And so take us through a little history of yourself and why bears? Like what's the catch of bears for you?
It's so funny. I didn't grow up as a hardcore bear hunter. Heck, my dad didn't even really bear hunt much. We grew up in Southwest Montana. Lots of bears and lots of guys hunting them. At that time in like the 80s and early 90s, it seemed like, you could count the guys that hunted bears on one hand that you knew, right?
Yeah.
It was just like, and those were days not that long before that where you got a bear tag with your elk tag. And it was just kind of not a target species for a lot of people. And where I grew up, elk was everything. I mean, like your status in the community was based on if you got an elk or not that year.
Right.
And so growing up, I mean, even in through high school and stuff, like I had a tattoo of an elk on my arm, not a bear, which is now covered and has a bear. So,
very good.
but that's just how I grew up. And then I think what my passion for the outdoors and just love being outside and wanting to be doing, like, really to be selfish, was like, what can I hunt? How can I hunt every day?
Mm-hmm.
And in the spring, we didn't have turkeys where I grew up. So it was like, well, we got to figure out bear hunting.
Yeah.
And that's what the start of this whole obsession and craze was trying to do something with having zero knowledge of it and going through years of just struggle. No real, the internet was so new at the time, so you're reading books, trying to talk to people. And it was just that process of like trying to learn about bears, trying to figure out how to hunt them. And then when you kind of finally start figuring it out and doing it all on your own, me and a buddy, last couple of years of high school into college. And when it finally started clicking, 5-6 years later, it was just like, I became obsessed with the species and how different it was than elk and deer hunting and antelope hunting for me. Such an individual animal. You're not hunting a herd animal, and bears react differently. Each bear is a different personality, essentially, and they do things differently. And really how hard it was, And when you do something for so long, you either quit, right, when you're not successful, or you become like an obsessed person about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be no middle road. Like I talk to a lot of guys that are like, oh, I tried bear hunting and I didn't see any bears. And I'm like, so you just gave up? And yeah, I wasn't into it. I was like, oh, I went the other way. Like, why am I not finding, what am I doing wrong? And so kind of went that direction. And, just really to me, what was kind of telling was like, there was just not a lot of information out there. There was not a lot of groups out there that were like promoting bear hunting, looking at conservation of bears, especially at this time. The grizzly bear numbers were booming across the West in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, starting to see grizzly bears in areas we never did. And so it's like, well, what's happening to black bears with all these grizzly bears moving in?
Yeah.
And then like, always worried, like, is there anyone doing anything for bear hunters? There's a turkey federation, there's everything, but there was really nothing for bear hunters. And I thought, yeah, we're not a very big group, but it was something I was so passionate about. I was just like, I got to figure out, like, I don't know how to start a nonprofit. I had no idea. Like, I've been in a for-profit world my whole life, running a business and doing all that, and just trying to figure it out. And I often thought that was going to be the hardest part of this journey, and it seems like the hardest part of the journey was not starting it. It's maintaining it and keeping it like it's growing so much that new challenges, different challenges than starting it, but
Yeah.
good challenges.
So I got a lot of questions with you in regards to the foundation and all those challenges. But before we get to that, I want to back it up and talk about how you said back when you were figuring out how you needed to hunt every day, bears was the species, and yet there weren't a lot of people that were bear hunters. Knowing that that was my very first big game animal that got me into the woods was black
Yeah.
bears, because I was a high school football coach, and it was the only season that was open before football kicked off, and so I could dedicate time to it. I was like, I've never had bear meat. I'm scared to death of bears in the woods. Like, you have all these ideas of like what bears
Yeah.
are, and then when you actually hunt them, and then when you get to lay your hand on the very first one, everything changes.
It's it was like the first one that I was able to take, my first bear, was after like 6 years of trying to figure it out. And like we did it in a spot where I like grew up elk hunting, and it was like not something someone even told us. It was just like pure this this is going to be a good spot, because on an old Forest Service map
Hmm.
before Google Earth and Onyx, I'm like, oh, I've been in this park elk hunting, and like the meadow runs along and it's like a fairway, and there's timber on both sides, a big clear cut. And I'm like, I bet if we hike in there, like that seems like a good place for a spring bear, like, you know, and man, we walked in there and it was late in the season, like early end of May, early June. And I mean, like it was meant to be. Finally, this big chocolate boar is eating white little flowers in this fairway park in Southwest Montana that we had to pack into and walk into and stuff. And not that far, a couple miles, but like not road hunting, not glassing slopes, like going out and like, hey, and we did it that way. And that was so cool. Like my camera back then was a winder,
Oh,
so
yes.
the pictures are terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have some pictures. I don't even know where they're at, but yeah, the pictures are terrible. And but I was just like, that changed the game for me.
Yeah.
Like that day, I was obsessed about it, and then after that, I was just like, I'm done. I don't care if I elk or deer hunt anymore. I just want to bear hunt.
Yes. I feel the same way. It wasn't until this last year I was able to notch a couple tags down here in Texas on the whitetails, that I actually had killed more bears than deer.
Yeah,
And, and when I told people that, they were like, serious? I've been
yeah,
hunting forever and I've never killed a bear. I've always thought about it. Or like you actually target them. They're not just a species that
oh
when
yeah,
you're out
yeah,
hunting deer that you see one, you're like, oh, okay, I'll shoot that. You know,
yeah.
blows me away. I love being, I guess, spreading the gospel of bear hunting is how I like to
So do
look at
I.
it.
So do I. I just like I want it to become not so mainstream helps, because it dispels a lot of the bad publicity bear hunting gets. As we get more mainstream bear hunters and bear hunting, I think it's breaking down some of the barriers for not only entry into the sport, because a lot of people are afraid to start it. Um, it's also like helping break down some of the misconceptions of it, because there's more and more people doing it with louder voices than I have, right?
Yeah.
So some of these folks on social media and these influencers, they're whether they're just starting bear hunting or they always have, but they're starting to realize like, hey, I can speak up and start adding to this narrative that like bear hunters aren't just hide hunters, and we're not just out there to kill. I always get so frustrated when people are like, oh, I saved a calf today or I saved a fawn today. And I'm like, is that the only reason that you bear hunted? That's fine.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got to have their own thing. But it's just that narrative of like, I bear hunt because I love bear hunting. When I shoot a bear, I'm not like, man, I'm so glad I saved an elk calf today.
You're
I'm like,
right.
dude, look at this remarkable species. Like I killed a bear last year. It was 16 years old, and it lived in like the epicenter of grizzly bear, one of the highest densities of grizzly bear populations in the lower 48. and it survived 16 years. Like that bear was older than my daughter,
Whoa.
and almost was. I had not. I mean, it was born only a few years before after I moved to Wyoming. So I start thinking like, in 16 years, like what did this thing see and do? And like for me to be able to have it and like put my hands on it and just be like, man, like that's just cooler to me than like, oh, I saved a fawn, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing your part. I get that. But like, so I think there's more and more people starting to bring it to light that like, hey, we're not just hide hunters, you know, people
Mhm.
eat them and important for conservation.
Why do you think people are starting? Why do you think bear hunting is starting to trend a little bit more now?
I think partly a lot of folks are just trying to find excuses like I was to get out in the woods more. Um, you know, the barrier for entry cost wise, you can bear hunt in almost every state over the counter.
Hmm.
We can't do that with deer and elk in most states anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I think an elk tag in Wyoming for a non-resident's $1,000. You can come here and bear hunt for 300.
Yeah.
You know, and so I could go to Washington and bear hunt for next to nothing compared to, you know, trying to get an elk tag in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easier.
You know, that's so true. I went to Idaho this year for spring bear, and it was $1,000 for for a week long trip. You know, like
Yeah, that's it.
that is not bad when it comes to going on a week long. You know, some people call it a vacation trip, a hunt,
Yeah.
like an experience.
Yeah, and I think too there's more people doing it and we have that whole like chasing influencer thing going on, like where I think you just see it more now on
Mhm.
TV and on Instagram and social media, Facebook, whatever. So I think it makes other people think like, oh, I want to do that. You know, like I may never like it, but I'm gonna try it. And they might be like we are, you know, the first time they go out and they get a bear or whatever, they just become obsessed. And so it's just and we're seeing in most states, tag sales increase every year
Awesome.
on bear licenses. So, you know, some states more than others, but you know, and so what we're also seeing, which is a great testament to hunting being conservation, is there's more black bears in the United States than there ever has been.
Yeah.
And that has happened while we've hunted bears forever. There was never a no bear hunting period for black bears. And all this time we've been hunting them, their population continues to grow. They're in states they've never been. Well, probably since he got here,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
um,
Louisiana just opened up their first bear season
yeah,
this year.
yeah.
Like,
Missouri's going strong. They've had several. I mean, we're looking at states. We're in a world of losing hunting opportunities. Like we're seeing it across the U.S. But in bear hunting, it seems like we're fighting on two front. Like we're fighting to keep it in some areas, but other areas are opening up.
mhm.
And so it's really cool to see. Like, I mean, Louisiana, that's just gonna, I think, set the tone for some other states and other areas like that. You know, there's some states that should be hunting bears that aren't, and I think we'll get there. But it's just cool to see that. I think sometimes we just get so negative, like we're never going to be able to do this, we're never going to be able to do that,
Yeah.
and then you see that happen. You're like, oh, you know, Montana, state I grew up in, I never dreamed they'd be chasing bears with hounds up there.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredible. That's a new hunting opportunity. Some people didn't like it because they're spot and stock guys. I'm all for bear hunting opportunities, and that's another one.
I,
And
I agree with you. Less is not more in this case. Hunting is something, the ability to provide food for ourselves and to live, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If I want to chase bears with hounds, or I want to do it with bait, or I want to spot and stock, like whatever, I just want to be able to do it.
mhm,
And so often we put blinders on ourselves and we focus on like, oh well, there's only one way, right?
mhm.
There can be two yeses, there can be two truths,
Oh yeah,
and we need to make sure that we keep that in mind. And once again, just because someone hunts doesn't mean they're pro bear hunting. So we need to also speak about that wherever we
yes,
go.
yeah. I'm naive, and I just think like if you're a hunter, you're probably. I've ran into people that do not agree with bear hunting that hunt deer and elk,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I don't understand it, but I'm always open to a conversation. It's interesting. You meet a lot of people doing this. I've met more people since I've been involved with the foundation than I probably ever would have, and lots of different opinions. And um, it's important to listen and just kind of get everyone's perspective on things because you might learn something. Usually, you do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You get to know where you stand in relation to everyone else very quickly.
Yes.
So let's talk about the foundation for a second. You said it's been growing, and I can only
Yeah.
imagine how it's been growing with the different popularity and the fights, such as the state of Washington and that
Hmm.
whole debacle with the commission board and all that.
Oh my God.
Talk about
I
the growth of the foundation before we break off into these
Yeah.
states and the battles.
Yeah. I think we've seen some pretty remarkable growth over the last, in that transition period where we went from Western Bear Foundation to American Bear Foundation. The kind of the catalyst for that was we had some states on the eastern seaboard that were wanting to they liked what we were doing out west and said, hey, there's probably an opportunity for something like that out here. We need that out here. We
Hmm.
need unity and organization, and we want to be able to do more. And so um, uh, uh, the state of Virginia, there was several passionate folks there that just really liked what we were doing out west. They liked our model of being all volunteer and saw we were actually like putting money to projects and not just trying to like make money off of members and stuff.
Yeah.
So kind of talked to them a little bit about it and had several people like Sean Clarkson was one of them that kind of was like, hey, we should start some chapters. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even like that was never even in my wheelhouse when we started this. My thought was just like focus on the Mountain West.
Yeah.
Um, but then I was like, yeah, I think the chapter thing makes a lot of sense because issues in Virginia, although they're bear issues, are going to be so different than issues in Montana, Wyoming, or Idaho, where I'm familiar with. And so I was like, the national foundation can't really talk to issues in Virginia if we don't have people in Virginia involved in national foundation. And so Sean is now on our board national, but we also that was the first chapter we started. And so that whole progression from being just kind of a three-state organization, maybe kind of a Western United States organization, to going national has been big. It's brought awareness to not just I wouldn't say just like the issues that they're up against out east. Um, it's also helped like there's just different networks, right? So the network of bear hunters in Virginia is much different than we're used to probably out here. Everyone runs hounds out there. Like it's a whole different world. And you need people that can relate to that. And so you start spreading that network out with people there. And then so that's where your growth is coming from. And it's pretty organic. We don't buy ads or do any of that stuff. It's just word of mouth and a lot of social media stuff, emails, and then through our members. Our members are our soldiers. They're out there every day. You know, this is what we're doing. We want to do more. And so I think after Virginia kind of became a chapter and we started accepting chapters, it was like, oh, we need one here. We need one here. And people started reaching out like, and basically the chapters are their own entity. Like they operate as a board. They have a board and they have their own bank accounts and they do things on their own. And they have support of national, the same mission, right?
Hmm.
So we have unity there, but you know they can drive the bus in their neck of the woods better than someone sitting up in Cody, Wyoming that doesn't really know can.
Yeah.
And so we've had some great. I mean, the Washington chapter has been remarkable. And sadly, that is because we faced so much challenges there. When you have that's usually what unites people, right? Uh, adversity.
Yeah.
And so before, when it was all great, no one knew what they could lose, and they're like, "Oh, Bears, who cares? They're around every corner in Washington. I'm not worried about it." all of a sudden when bear hunting comes up on the block, they're like, oh, there's a chapter. I'm like, what are we doing? And so we were seeing that California, Oregon. So we have chapters in California, Oregon, Washington, Missouri, Virginia. Haven't chaptered the states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming yet. We're working on it, but it was just like, that's where I live kind of. So I
Yeah.
was able to do a lot. But
Man, that's so incredible. You speak about adversity. When adversity comes, there's strength in numbers, and when we can unify our voice and force it all in one direction, it really starts to make a difference. Um, it's insane to me, like true insanity, that they want to take away. Well, they did take away spring bear hunting in the state of Washington, and yet you can still have 2 fall bear tags. It's like
it is
the
the
numbers don't
the
sustain. Like what?
the comments that come off of that commission are baffling to me.
Well,
Like it is.
let's just talk about the most recent comments from the commission.
Oh my God.
Do you want the pleasure of
I mean, the commission is considering in Washington, because now if not everyone knows, they've not reintroducing, they're
they've been there?
augmenting.
Yeah.
They've been there. They're augmenting the Northern Cascades, which has always been, I will say this, part of the Endangered Species Act. They grizzly bears were listed. That species has been a species that Northern Cascades demographic has been on the map for a long time.
Yeah.
As they want to put bears back there eventually. Now most of us know they moved there on their own, but they're adding some, right?
Yep.
And so the commission is real, like people are starting to come out and say, like, you're going to have grizzly bears in the Northern Cascades. There's going to be like, that is a high use.
Yeah, a lot of
area.
hikers.
I mean, worse than where I live as far as usage goes, because the population is so much bigger.
Yep.
And so, long story short, with conflict, you're going to have a lot of conflict with grizzly bears in the area, and you already have a lot of black bears in that state. So one of the ideas that the commission had, or I can't remember her name specifically, that mentioned it. He holds up a newspaper and says, "Oh, this is a grizzly bear, I think." And someone's like, "No, that's a black bear." And talking about a bear getting in trouble. So she already doesn't know how to tell what bear is what. And they said, well, they're considering doing underground fences for these bears. Now, that's great, but it's not like a dog where you at your house, you're gonna have to collar every bear for an underground fence to work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could bury 200 miles of fence around a chicken coop, and if a bear that is not collared you walk right through. So it's like they have no idea what they're talking about. They know nothing about wildlife management. They won't listen to the wildlife management. It's really an abomination. I mean, it is. It's the biggest disgrace in conservation that's going right now.
Well, and so this is conversation eventually splits towards politics, but this is very, very important that when you vote as an American citizen, let me say American citizen, when you're voting, you got to look beyond the character that you see on a television, because that person, whether or not you like that individual or don't like that individual, you really need to vote based off of policy, because how they view things and based off of their policies has a direct impact on you in places that you might not even realize it, which is exactly what happened in the state of Washington. Mm-hmm. You elected a Democrat governor for multiple terms, and just like the Supreme Court, whoever's in got to a point, and
you get a packet.
Yep, and he packed the Wildlife Commission board with a bunch of people that are anti-hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have all these people there that are appointed by the governor that aren't voted in by the people and have no skin in the game. And it's called a conspiracy, but they're on the move to wipe out hunting. One animal, one species at a time, one season at a time.
And honestly, sadly, it's providing an example for the rest of us in this country that are in different states. Like, if you do not pay attention to what is going on That's going to happen.
Yes.
And thank God there are some people in Washington that are just not letting their foot off the gas when it comes to organizing. Like we are, we are doing some, but there are other groups that are just, I mean, not even just groups, just people that have like gotten to the point where they're like, I'm done. And thank God for them because they are going to every one of these meetings. They're speaking up. They're holding these commissioners accountable, and that's what we need, you know. And thankfully, it's sad that it had to get to that point, but I think those are things that you can look at the silver lining is it's organizing more of sportsmen, and we're starting to see kind of the hey, this is their master plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we kind of know that. And so how do we get together and figure out ways to combat that?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, the master plan has been exposed through packing
Yep.
the commission boards and then ballot box biology.
Ballot box.
And,
We're
and
seeing that in Colorado.
right, and letting people who aren't invested in hunting in the outdoors vote and go against the biology and the biologists of the state departments, saying, "Well, no, actually, this is this," um, but there's enough people on the signature block to say, "Okay, let's open it up to everybody." You know?
It's it's like what you're seeing in Colorado with the mountain lion. Um, the commission doesn't have any say in that. That's all a ballot box.
Yep.
So they get it on the initiative. Now it's going to be voted on by the people, and you know, hunters way under index against people that don't like hunting in
Mm-hmm.
Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do you think, I mean, if you're living under a rock and you don't know about this, like you need to go do some homework on what's going on in Colorado.
Well, let's talk about living under a rock. I moved to the state of Texas, and as great and grand as the state of Texas is, there's an arrogance that is like, well, it can't happen here,
Oh yeah.
which is fascinating because hunting is cultural down here. Like my hairdresser was talking about how she, eats nothing but venison. And I'm like, "Do you hunt?" She's like, "No, but, I get a ton of deer meat from my neighbors and my friends, and that's just what we eat." And I'm like, "Okay, awesome." And the issue is that we can't rest on our laurels, right? So now here in Texas, uh, they're starting to talk about how they're looking at not being able to trap for cougars down here.
Mm.
It's like, okay, here's the slippery slope, give them an inch, take a mile type thing. Well, beyond that is Texans have no concept, from my perspective, by the way. I could be a little wrong, but from my perspective, they have no concept of how hunting is under attack out west.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, guys, united, we got to be with it.
Well, you live in a state similar to where I live in Wyoming. And I always say it's like Wyoming, we're like in an echo chamber. Like we're so sheltered and insulated because fairly conservative state. I mean, everyone here has the same values, and a lot of people say like Wyoming is the way America used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like you. Everyone here hunts, or there's hunters in their family. Like it's not a thing here. It's just a way of life.
Yep.
And you look at a state where you would think Colorado, like, oh, there's tons of elk there, there's deer, whatever. You'd think that no, it's not the case there. I mean, hunters are very much a minority there, and they're under attack. I mean, if they lose lion hunting, what's next?
Right.
I mean, they introduced wolves, and so now they have wolves there. They don't have a spring bear season, so that was another That was another thing that happened through legislation. No spring bear season. They have wolves now. Potentially no mountain lion. So what's going to happen to your elk numbers and deer numbers after you have three apex predators that are being unmanaged, basically?
Well,
And the state makes a ton of money on elk hunters.
and it's so fascinating because, and this is what hunters and just general population do not understand. The federal duck stamp came about because they realized that ducks don't just stay in one location, right? They migrate from all the way up north and go across borders of countries. Well, here you are, you have one state that reintroduces wolves, we all know how much dogs like to breed, and just I'm laughing right now thinking about the electric underground fence for grizzly bears.
Yes.
Animals don't know boundary lines. They,
No.
like, oh, hey, no, this is Colorado, stay out of Utah. Oh, don't go into Wyoming. Don't, like,
That imaginary line that's on Yellowstone National Park, they don't know that's there. I mean, like they don't know, like, oh, I can't come out of the park, and so it's we are being yeah, we're being overrun with idiocy. It's crazy. The thing that, like, I worry about Colorado. So what happens to the other states around Colorado? So if those houndsmen there lose that right to chase lions, what do they do? So then they're coming to Wyoming, they're going to Utah, they're going to all these other states. So when you create that kind of restriction in one area, it pushes out to other areas. So everyone's on top of each other now. Like we're going to see that. And those people, that's like a living. There's outfitters that make their way of life is chasing lions. And
yeah,
so you're just cutting them out of the equation because you don't like it.
right.
Most lion hunters are the best conservationists there are because they don't kill a lot of cats. They do a lot of work for the species. So anyone, I'll plug them, but Coloradoans for Responsible Wildlife Management and Dan Gates, look them up. They're doing a great job trying like hell to stop this. But that's another one. Ballot box, it could happen.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, and you can speak about this from you in your personal position versus American Bear Foundation position. I'd like to hear it because, um, well, I respect you, and I want to hear what you think. A lot of people, even hunters, are like, "Oh man, don't reintroduce grizzly bears. Don't, but they're a part of the original landscape. What
Yeah,
what's your take on this?
I don't mind them. I think what our take on it and mine personally, and it kind of helped form the position we took in Washington with the augmentation, I'll call it, of grizzly bears. Like they're going there naturally. Why not just allow that to happen?
Hmm.
Like we do not need to get involved in everything when it comes to wildlife. We do. We're humans. We're arrogant. We'll fix everything,
Hmm.
right? So if grizzly bears are going there naturally, we're running out of room in all these other ecosystems. So if grizzly bears come out of the Bitterroot, Selkirk, or whatever, wherever they're coming from, the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem, and they're going over there, let them do it because they're going there for a reason. The other one's plumb full.
Yeah.
Same with the Yellowstone ecosystem. They're branching out everywhere because it's full. So, like, I would have said, like, if you want to do that, like, you have to have your ducks in a row with all the other population segments before you start adding.
Hmm.
You can't even manage the ones that you have. Me speaking to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because that's who controls this. Um, the states are responsible, and not a lot of people know this. They think, well, it's a federally listed species. The feds must handle it all. Wrong. The states manage the grizzly bear for the feds. The feds are involved very loosely, like when it comes time to put a bear down.
Hmm.
You know, there's someone at the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that makes that call. But the money, Wyoming spent over 40 million on grizzly bear recovery
Whoa.
of their own money, taxpayer dollars. So the money, Washington can barely get out of their own way. How are they going to manage a grizzly bear now?
Yeah.
So, and it's not the feds. The state of Washington is going to have to manage that species now. And so for me, I have no problem with grizzly bears being there. I think it's great. Like I can go out and see grizzly bear. I mean, I see them all the time, but it's like that's wild. That's nature. That's cool to me.
Yeah.
That's a potential hunting opportunity down the road. But it has to be right and it has to make sense. And I just think we get in the way too much, man. We're just
Yeah. Yeah.
I I say this very often. It's kind of my new favorite thing. Like, um, if we disappeared tomorrow, wildlife wouldn't care. You know.
So true.
And the other thing I always like to say is like we have to take responsibility for living here and being on this planet. And sometimes that's a hard choice. Like you have to make hard decisions like managing wildlife. Sometimes it's not easy. And you got to be okay with removing bears and taking cats out of the population. That's a responsibility we have. Now, if we don't want that responsibility, we can't live here.
Hmm.
We got to go somewhere else and let them live and do it their own way. But that's never going to happen.
Right.
We're here. So we have to take responsibility. And that's kind of my speech to the anti-hunters. Like, yeah, you want this kind of like Dr. Doolittle view of the world and wildlife. Like, if you want that, you have to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
You also, you don't just get to say, hey, what are they um oh man, I'm drawing a blank. The whole rules for thee, not for me
oh yeah,
concept.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah.
hey, you can't do this, but I'm gonna still stay here. you know?
It's I look. There's a city in Colorado, Durango, has the most horrible bear conflict issues. I mean, there's black bears all over that city. And they're just like, well, we put garbage cans out and we did this and we did that. I'm like, the answer to a lot of those problems? We need to get rid of some of those bears.
Hmm.
Like, they're in town for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't want to let that happen and you don't want that to be a choice, like, you need to leave.
Right.
Like, and you won't have bear conflict.
Yeah.
We are the problem, not wildlife.
Yep. I I I think hunters don't understand that hunting is political.
Oh,
It wasn't always, but
mm-mm.
now it is. And the funny thing is that we're trained from the youngest of ages not to talk about money, religion, and politics. Oh,
Yes.
don't talk about those three things. You might cause somebody to get upset. Well, really, because the best thing to know is how to stand for something, right? If
Yeah.
you don't,
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So when we are taught by society to not talk about money, religion, and politics, what are the three things that people are going to have no concept about?
Those three.
Yep, because we never talk about them. And
And
now,
they won't know how to talk to other people about them.
correct, correct. And here we are in a state where our hunting rights, if which, by the way, people, hunting is a right, not a privilege.
Mhm.
If you want to hear me on that, I do an episode, I think, 262, all about hunting being a right, not a privilege. Um, is is that if it's a right, you got to be able to defend it, right?
Mhm.
Our forefathers uh, went to war over tax on tea, amongst other things, a 2% tax on tea. Well, how much are you getting taxed on today? How much
Yeah, what
more are you
I mean,
okay getting stripped away from you? Like, get out of here,
we'd have already been at war
right?
years ago. Like with what's happening now, like we just I think people get so like I'm just gonna stay in my lane and everything's good for me right now. Like I don't want to and we're very guilty in Wyoming. I would say a lot of Texans probably are too because we have it really good where we live.
Yeah,
We're very fortunate,
yeah,
and I think that complacency is terrible. I, even like what you brought it back to voting, like I think people think of voting and they're like, "Oh, I'm voting for a president or something." I'm like, go to the ballot box to vote for your local stuff because I mean, if you got a chance to go vote for a senator, legislator, whether it's state or federal or a governor, like those are super important
yeah,
because as you see in Washington, what happens when you get a bad governor? And at the federal level, my issues with how the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has handled the services grizzly bear, that's an appointed position that runs that department, and that's appointed by the President of the United States. So I think I don't have to say much more as to why we have delayed the grizzly bear ruling yet again for another 6 months.
right,
Um, they're going to wait until the election's over,
yeah,
and it's all political. The grizzly bear has become politicized, and it's a shame.
yeah,
It really is. We're not doing anything good for the bears. now, the way things have been. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, to have to see bears get euthanized because there's just nowhere for them to go. They're just blowing out into the prairie and stuff, and they're getting taken out. Like, what? How do we got to do that? Like, we hunt them a little bit. It's not going to hurt nothing. I mean, we already are over. I don't know.
Right. Well, what's the success rate on hunting bears? That is something I don't know.
It's pretty low. It's pretty low, especially in spot and stock only states. Um, in Wyoming, just because I see the numbers more, most of the bears in Wyoming are taken over, but it's still a low success rate. I don't even know. In some states, it's probably way higher than others. I imagine Washington, it's probably pretty good. But yeah, Wyoming's pretty low. Montana was always kind of pretty low just because it was always spot and stock.
Yeah.
I imagine Idaho's is pretty good because they have 3 methods of take there, Allen's bait, spot and stock. So I think it depends on where you're at, but it's definitely not. Bears aren't like you can just go out every night and find one.
Right.
And they're not in herds. So it's not like if you see one, there's going to be a bunch more around. I mean, it's tough. So yeah, I don't know what the success rates are.
If everyone listening to this podcast, go buy a bear tag and go hunt bears. Your life is going to be transformed. You're going to be like, this is the coolest thing ever.
It's really one of the things that really probably took me to the next level with them was I went from trying to figure out how to hunt them. I kind of got into this phase of trying to learn as much as I can about them, and I'm in that phase now, like not figuring out how to hunt them as much as like I want to know everything there is to know about bears, and that drives a lot of our work in the foundation as far as research work and stuff. And like, why does this happen? What's going on here? And like, I want to understand them more. That's really, I think, an important thing for new bear hunters too, is like understand, read up on them, like learn about bears. It'll make you a better bear hunter than just trying to go out and figure out like, oh, I read online or this Instagram guy said you got to spot these areas or whatever. It's like, go learn about bears and you can figure it out pretty easily after you do that.
Yeah, 100%. Brother, is there anything that we missed or anything that you want to talk about?
I don't really have anything, man. Yeah, we just been grinding. We've got the website. We have a big raffle going on now. So that's going to be on our website. The drawing for that's coming up September 2nd, I think. That's kind of our one major fundraising methods for the year. We're just, I like to let people always know that we're on all volunteer organizations, so no paid employees. So with the foundation, when you spend money, it goes to projects and back on the ground to bears and bear hunting. So yeah, that's about it.
Man, that's so cool. How many? What is it? $35 for a 1-year membership?
Yeah, 35 for 1-year membership. You get an issue of Bear Hunting Magazine. I think it's every couple months you get that issue. So yeah, and then what the biggest thing I always tell people is like, then you're kind of you're on the list and you're going to hear about this is happening here. This is a project we got going. So we just had a couple projects in Montana that we're able to get volunteers to, go do some cool collecting hair off snare traps, for DNA research on black bears. And, that's how you get into the fold is I'll have your email address and then I'll be able to let you know what's going on in your state, what's happening in your neck of the woods, how you can help more. And so that's always an important thing.
I love that. One thing I just remembered I want to talk about. I live in Texas. There's no bear hunting, but
no,
there's bears here.
There's bears there. It's really cool. They're doing a lot of. There's a research project going on right now in Texas. I don't have all the details, but I think it's a college there or someone's doing a whole research project on bears in like down south on the border of Texas.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Like there'll be some cool stuff that comes out of that just because no one thinks of bears there.
No.
I mean, talk about the coolest animal can live anywhere on the planet basically and thrive.
Dude, they're the best, man. They're the absolute best. I drove this summer. I took my family on a road trip from Texas down to the Florida Keys because being from the Northwest, you don't see the Southeast or the South or the
That's a
East. That
whole nother planet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was driving through these states, especially like when I first crossed from Texas into Louisiana. I was like, man, they have a bear season. It's
Hmm.
right here, and I'm looking at this topography, and I'm like, okay, I got to learn how to hunt southern bears, and like
Oh,
in like different manner.
if I feel like I know a lot. I'm always humbled every year by bears where I live because I'm like, oh, I got. And every year I think I have it figured out. Something bad happens, or I learn like I don't have anything figured out. If you dropped me in Arkansas or Louisiana or Virginia or North Carolina and said go get a bear, I'd probably be so lost. I mean, it's a completely different world. It's so cool though. It's like you could go hunt the same species as you hunt in Washington, Wyoming, Idaho, or Montana out east and have 100% different experience.
Yes.
Like that is so neat to me. Like you could go down and hunt the swamps
Hmm.
and hunt for bears. Like that's such a unique experience and opportunity we have as bear hunters to be able to do that.
Let's expand on that a little bit more because you're onto something right there that I actually haven't ever wrapped my head around. I understand how like, hey, how would I hunt bears here? But to talk about that, mule deer are always going to be in mule deer terrain.
It
White-tailed
seems like
deer
it,
are
yeah.
all over the place. Elk,
River bottoms and
yeah,
farm fields, yeah.
yeah. Bears literally can be anywhere.
Yeah,
And
I mean they are one of the most adaptable species on the planet, and that's all species. Like you've seen it. What I said before, throughout the expansion into the West, from the time we landed here, expansion into the West, bears, black bears have been around. They survived that whole, you know, proliferation of the West. They survived and made it. They weren't trapped out. They weren't killed out like a lot of other species were. And now we sit here and can say there's like bear hunting in states that have never had it. And there's bears all the way down Mexico,
uh-huh.
all the way up to the tree line and Northwest Territories.
It
Black bears can live.
it's crazy. You think about, you know, I'm going to draw from my childhood for a second. Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier on Disney, like back when Disney Channel would be free for, the Sunday nights. And, it was always like, I'm going to, what is he, grin down a bear? He's going to,
Yeah,
he grin a bear. And so that was all black bears. But then you go watch the movie like Jeremiah Johnson, and
yeah,
it's all about grizz,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, okay, where like black bears get forgotten about in the midst of grizzly bears, but yet they're everywhere.
Thank you for that because this is one of my biggest things. Black bears are not a resource concern, so they just get shucked down on the list of, well, they're just there. They like they're kind of like that weed that just comes up every year, and no one you don't have to worry about it, or your lawn. Like I know it's going to be there every year. Their bears are just there, so no one cares, or they care, but they don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then it's also this thing of like, um, you don't miss it until it's gone, right? And that's how bears are. And so much of the money all these states are spending on wildlife, black bear, they're like, well, we've never had a black bear. I don't even know what our population is, but we have them. It's like, so don't you want to figure? No, they're just there. And so it, like you said, when you go down east and southeast and on the east, there are like bear hunting is a religion in some of these communities. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a way of life. We didn't have that out west. Like it's different out here. We're deer and elk. You go down in some of those southern communities, Virginia, those people, that is everything to them. Like, and we're just not used to that here. Like they do projects out there. They spend money on black bears because it's an important thing in their culture, in their society. It brings revenue to the state. Out here, we're just like, oh, we have sheep and bighorn sheep and grizzly bears and this, like black bears are,
Right.
they're just, yeah, we don't care, you
Yeah,
know.
it's like the hogs of the West, right? Like, oh, it's just a hog. Oh,
Hmm.
it's just a black bear.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. And it's such an iconic species for, like, it represents wild, and wilderness to me. And just the fact that they can live in a swamp in Florida or in a desert in Mexico or all the way up in Alaska and everywhere in between. I'm like, how can you not be enthralled by a species like that?
Right. So true.
Like, you can't put a white-tailed deer in half of those areas, but everyone loves them damn whitetail, man. And I'm just like,
I know. I moved to whitetail country without ever
oh
actually
boy,
shooting a mule deer. I've never shot a mule deer. And
really?
yes, I'm like, although I'm stacking points in Wyoming, I'm going to give you a
Oh,
call here
come on
pretty
up,
soon.
because it's definitely not as good as it used to be, but we still have some pretty awesome deer hunting, some cool hunts and opportunities. Like, I like whitetail hunting. It's fun, but man, those big mule deer just drive me crazy.
Yeah.
They're number two behind bears for me. And the older I get, the elk fall further down because they're heavier, and pack getting suckier and suckier every year.
Oh man, I love it. Hey, here's a question for you that I bet a lot of people don't know. What is the average size black bear? Like, what's a good sized bear that someone could be like, man, I'm really proud that I shot this thing. Although,
Oh man, I mean, that's a great question. So definitely geographic based, because there are giants on the East Coast that will make some of our grizzly bears look like cubs.
yeah,
I mean, they kill 700-pound black bears in Pennsylvania. Um, a big mountain black bear in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, like couple big boar in the spring, 250
right,
maybe.
right,
You know, they're not huge. I mean, like I was telling you, I killed that bear was 16 years old, just about 20 inch skull. I mean, that bear only, I mean, maybe, I don't know. We pack them, we're never by a road to carry them out, so I can't get weight. But, people are like, that's a 400-pound bear in the spring. A 400-pound bear is a big, big black bear
yeah,
where we live. Now, 400-pound bear in Pennsylvania might just be average. I don't know. But, some sows don't get much more than 100 pounds, 150 pounds,
yep, yep,
It's now in the fall when they're packing it on, and they lose so much of their body weight in the den. So they're definitely going to be skinnier in the spring and leaner. They're going to be heavier in the fall, but man, they're not going to put on 300 pounds. A 200-pound bear is not going to be 500 in the spring or in the fall. So
yeah,
I think it's all people get ground shrinkage with bears. Like, they don't understand it, and they shoot one and they're like, oh, bears are big and scary. And no, I mean, they're not often that huge.
right.
Even, I mean, our big grizzly bear where we live is 500-600 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. We're
That's
not
big.
we're not talking Kodiaks.
No,
Yeah,
no.
and that's the misconception and the lack of knowledge that people don't know.
Oh, it's true. I mean, they see pictures and videos and TV and stuff, and everything looks so big. I mean, the true giant black bears are on the eastern seaboard. California's got some mega tanker bears, but they're not hitting that. That I think it's the food, and then over time, just the genetics and kind of that keeping that genetic, kind of that DNA in that same area. And they made now. There's not every bear in Pennsylvania is 700 pounds either. So I mean, it's like they have the potential to get that big bear.
Yeah,
Say there in California. I mean, North Carolina's got huge bears. Virginia, it's different. They're mass crops. Like, it's a different food source. They're able to pack it on more. Um, Definitely don't have the winters like some of our bears sleep for 6 months of the year. It's hard to get big when you're sleeping all the time.
dude, that is very true. Very true.
So it's a that's another cool thing about them. There's almost like different subspecies of black bears on this continent.
Yeah,
Like, mountain, like northern mountain bears and southeast giants and coastal bears, and yeah, it's so neat.
yeah. Oh man, I love it. Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge, your passion, and your love for the outdoors and for the Ursus Americana. It,
Great.
dude, it is such an amazing animal. Thanks for creating the American Bear Foundation. Hats off to you, all you listeners. I want you to understand something that you. It's important to, if you're going to join groups, always start with Second Amendment first, whether it's NRA or Second Amendment Foundation or a different one, like protect your gun rights. Then
Hmm.
conservation organizations across the board, like Sportsman's Alliance,
Yeah.
something like that. and then get into a critter club. Find a critter that really means something to you or that you really want to connect with. Maybe it's multiple, but for me, that's American Bear Foundation. Like, bears speak to me. They're my spirit animal, and it's where I want to be every year. So take that, chew on it, and if whether or not you can join American Bear Foundation as a member or you are joining other groups, just understand that it's all up to us. Whether you're a mule deer hunter, elk hunter, whitetail, bear hunter, it's up to us, and we got to be fighting all together. And we got to make sure we finish the race. We don't just start up this giant wave and then it pitters out, and then it's like, oh wait, we're not done yet. We got to carry it all the way through.
Amen.
So, brother, I really appreciate it. AmericanBearFoundation.org, everybody. And then you can go follow them on Instagram at American Bear Foundation as well.
Yep.
And go sign up, see how you can get involved. And if you want to know more about them or bear hunting, reach out to Joe, the foundation, or myself. Love to point you in the right direction. Remember that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. You're not a victim in this world. You get to set this world on the course in which you want. Be a rudder. Don't just be without one on the ocean, getting pushed around by waves and wind. Be blessed. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember to go vote for Soul Seekers for Best Bird Episode on Carbon TV. And remember that if it's meant to be, it's up to me, and it's up to you, and it's up to all of us. So let's go fight the good fight. Be blessed. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Johnny Mack, Joe Kondelis of American Bear Foundation. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.